Hello, everyone. Welcome. We hope you're all joining easily for what will be a very, very interesting discussion. My name is Beatrice Jona Affron. I am the Louise and Alan Reed Music Director at Philadelphia Ballet. On behalf of the Ruth and A. Morris Williams Jr. Artistic Director, Angel Correa, and the Dr. Carolyn Newsom Executive Director, Shelley Power, along with the board, emeritus trustees, artists, and staff, it is my pleasure to welcome you to this evening's discussion. Before we begin, I'd also like to thank supporters who have made possible not only tonight's webinar, but also our production of La Sylphide with Études. Alan R. and Judy Brick-Friedman, who are supporting this event, thank you. And the sponsors for La Sylphide with Études are Neil W. Krause and Carl Fong and Varenhorst Architects, who have designed our building that is in progress. So thank you very much to all of them. I'd like to let everyone know that this is being recorded and that we will invite our Zoom participants to submit questions via the chat for a Q&A at the end. I am so happy to introduce our extremely distinguished panel of experts. They are so distinguished, in fact, that I've had to shorten their biographies in order to leave enough time to have this conversation. I will start at the far end with Dinna Bjørn, who is from Denmark and who has been staging La Sylphide for us. Sadly, this is her last day. We're all very sad about it. Dinna is one of the very few Bournonville specialists in the world today, and you will hear much more about what that means. She danced with the Royal Danish Ballet from 1964 to 1987, after which she pursued a freelance career as a Bournonville teacher. In 1990, Dinna became artistic director of the Norwegian National Ballet, and from 2001 to 2008, she was the artistic director of the Finnish National Ballet. Dinna has staged La Sylphide as well as many other Bournonville works all over the world. Next, we have Jack Thomas, whom many of you know well. He hails from Denver, Colorado. He began his career in the second company at Houston Ballet. Lucky for us, he joined Philadelphia Ballet in 2016, and he has risen steadily through the ranks. He was promoted to principal dancer in 2021. Philadelphia audiences have seen Jack perform many, many principal roles, but this is Jack's first Bournonville ballet, so much to discuss there. Next to Jack is Lise Lander, née Elisabeth Gateau, is your other name, yeah? Lisa was the assistant to the choreographer of Études, Harald Lander, and from 1965 until his death in 1971, she was also his wife. She has supervised Études all over the world, and she is the heir to the rights to Harald Lander's works, and we will talk more about that in a moment. Next, we have Thomas Lund, who is also from Denmark. He is our stager for Études. Thomas trained at the Royal Danish Ballet School, after which he joined the company and eventually became a principal dancer. Thomas has performed many principal roles in many Bournonville ballets, including La Sylphide, of course, as well as classical and neoclassical ballets. Thomas is a teacher of the Bournonville style, and he has given Bournonville master classes also around the world. Thomas was the director of the Royal Danish Ballet School from 2012 to 22. And I also happen to know that Thomas is an excellent pianist, which is a very rare thing. Last but never least, we have Sydney Dolan, who joined Philadelphia Ballet's second company in 2016, and a year later she joined the main company as an apprentice. She was promoted to the Corps de Ballet in the 2018-2019 season, and then to soloist during the 2019-2020 season, and a little over a year ago, following a performance as the Siren in Prodigal Son, Sydney was promoted to principal dancer. This is Sydney's first time performing the role of the ballerina in Études. So, as you might have guessed by now, both ballets on this program were born at the Royal Danish Ballet in Copenhagen, or more or less born. But since La Sylphide opens the program, I'd like to begin with that. I'm just going to give very quick background. I don't want to do most of the talking, so I'll go fast. It was choreographed by the great August Bournonville. We have a painting of Bournonville. He was the artistic director of the Royal Danish Ballet for a whopping 47 years. That may be a world record for an artistic director. I haven't checked, but there he is on the left. His artistic life covers really most of the Romantic period. He studied in Paris under another Auguste Beatrice, who was known as the god of dance. He was perhaps the first superstar of the ballet world, as I understand it. He was a prolific choreographer, Bournonville was. His best-known work is La Sylphide, which holds a very, very important place in dance history. It is the oldest romantic story ballet that is still in the modern repertoire. La Sylphide is a piece that goes back also quite far in our company's history. There's going to be a photograph soon. Our company has performed it for many, many years, and there's an excellent performance for those of you who are curious on YouTube. It was filmed for Dance in America in 1989. But we haven't performed it, there we go, up there with Debbie Austin and Jeffrey Gribler. There we go. But we haven't performed it here since 2009. So, my first question for our distinguished experts is to please talk to us about the Bournonville technique, which is really still known today. Can you describe for us the style and what makes it distinctive?
Yes, well, it's classical ballet. It originates, as you also said, from the French school where Bournonville was educated, and his father was also French. And then he developed it into his own style. And if one should say just in very short words what style we could use, Bournonville's own words, what he said dance should be, it should express joy, beauty, and harmony. And for Bournonville, it was very important that dance was an expression of joy. So when he does his story ballets, you dance when you are happy. And when you have other emotions, he expressed that in pantomime and with gestures. And now one can say the ballet that is going to be in the program here with Philadelphia Ballet, La Sylphide, is in some ways atypical for Bournonville because it's the only one that has this not happy ending. It's a sad story, and it's because Bournonville stole it from France, from Taglioni's original La Sylphide, that follows the same story. But nevertheless, when one dances in La Sylphide, it's an expression of joy. You will see a fantastic Scottish reel in the first act where everybody are enjoying themselves at the party. And in second act, when the sylphs are dancing, they are happy creatures. They are spirits of the nature, and when they dance, they are happy. And if you, as an audience, should watch it, and what would you then see is maybe different from other styles. You will see that there's a lot of jumps, both for the men, which is more normal, but also a lot of jumping for the women. A lot of very quick footwork. And as a contrast, that's the harmony and beauty that Bournonville is talking about. The upper body should be totally like nothing is happening down there. You do this fluid, more rounded arm movements, and maybe we dance nowadays in classical ballet style. And sometime also with opening the hands, like you give yourself, you give your heart, you give your soul to the audience, and then you include them with the rounded arms. But Bournonville was he wanted to include the audience. Actually, the thing about the Bournonville style is that he didn't want it to look difficult. He wanted that the audience should look at it and feel that they could get up and dance it themselves. And that's the most difficult for a dancer, because you should hide how difficult it is and make it look like, oh, it's so easy.
Can you say something about where this stillness of the upper body and the activity of the lower body, was it just his invention, or did he draw inspiration from somewhere for this style?
Well, I mean, he's a child of the Romantic period. And I think the quick footwork was also something. He was the dancer himself. All his first ballets he choreographed for himself. That's why he wanted Sylphide, because I think one of the best roles in the ballet repertoire is James in La Sylphide. And he wanted to do it himself. And he was good at the quick footwork. So I think it was partly that. And then because he wants harmony and beauty, that's why he doesn't want a lot of frantic arm movements that follows the leg movements. He wanted the contrast between to be on top of it and then to look like it's just beautiful.
Did you have something to add?
Just to add a small thing because of the easiness of this, and that you asked about the arms being down. Another thing is that how we incline the head. We quite often go a little bit under like this for certain things, but we also look towards the foot one way or the other way. And maybe when you experience Sylphide, or maybe another day you will see another Bournonville ballet, when the arms are down, both arms, in Brabant, then if you at the same time in your épaulement, the way of the direction of your eye, look towards the foot, then it draws the attention down there. And now Dinna was talking about all of the things that goes quickly in the footwork. So there are moments where both men and also the women, we do things where we actually have the arms, both arms down, but we do something a little difficult in the legs, and then we look towards the legs, and then it draws the attention there.
So he's teaching the audience how to look at his choreography.
Yeah, it's change of direction somehow within the choreography. Yeah.
This is a question actually for both of you, since we are both talking about the technique. What is the process for becoming a Bournonville stager, a specialist, someone who is sent around the world to teach his works?
Well, I mean, to become a stager, I think it's not just because you have been dancing the ballet that you can stage it. You have to have a special interest in all the details. And, well, I love Bournonville from when I was a child. I saw already my father was a dancer, my mother was a musician, so I was very often in the theater to see the Bournonville ballets as a child. Then when I became a dancer, I felt this style was suiting me. I was not a adagio dancer, I liked the quick thing and the jumps. So it suited me, and I just started to write down, actually, with my own little notation system, all the choreography, just because I thought it was so fantastic that it was actually kept in its original form, passed on from one dancer to the next since it was created in 1800. And then I had all these notations, and out from that, of course, came an interest at one point to pass it on. Especially when you get older, you don't dance so much anymore, but you feel you have a lot of knowledge and experience you want to pass on.
So it sounds like while you were still dancing, you thought like a stager, right? You were going home and writing things down.
Yes, I wrote down. I don't know for what reason. It was for my own, but probably I had some thoughts about that. I would use it for something later on.
Yeah. How about you, Thomas?
If I have to start even before ballet, it just came to my mind. When I was a child and I was at home, our hometown, and there was a little street, and we were kids living in front of my house, and we would roller skate or we would do something like this. I would like to organize that, kids that were having roller skates living in houses with even numbers, that they would roll out first and the uneven numbers would be. And now I'm looking suddenly, many years later, I see I'm staging a ballet and it goes with the white tutu ladies and the black tutu ladies and the men. And I'm thinking, I didn't know why I did this, but I like that to have things in order, and I also liked putting on a performance and looking at that later on in life.
In fact, we have a photograph of Thomas as a child somewhere in this collection, and also as a grown-up dancer, so we'll eventually get there.
We'll maybe get back to this. Is a picture for me, actually, I think, when I was actually in La Sylphide, because there is, I don't know if the picture will appear.
It'll there you are. There's your farewell performance.
This is me as James. Yeah,
there
and
he is on the right, as the young boy.
And this is when I had just entered the ballet school. And I was at this age of being probably 12 years, so that's when I stopped creating roller skating at the home street. I had moved into Sylphide, and I was, there's some children, which you will see if you come and watch the performance.
When they come, yes.
There will be kids in front. But going back to organizing, or at least creating, being in front of a whole company with lots of beautiful dancers. They spent, many years of training from when they were very young, and suddenly they are capable of doing something incredible. And to be a part of, I've done that journey myself. Okay, I started a little bit late, but still, I went to the ballet school, went through all of that, and to be able to fall in love with something, fall in love with an art form, and then passing that on to when you work together in the studio, and hopefully giving that love, giving that excitement, bringing that into the group, feeling the group dynamic within the company, which I think we felt very much when we were here working with Philadelphia Ballet. And then when that finally goes on stage, and we can maybe lean back and enjoy the performance, and then the curtain goes up, and then you will give your audience a lot of that joy. And so basically, when I'm staging something, it's also because it's something that I really have spent most of my life doing, and I love it. And then maybe I just want more people to love it in that sense. Yeah.
Jack, we've been talking about how the Bournonville style looks different from other styles of ballet, but this is sort of a perfect time to ask you this question, because it is relatively new for you, right? Although I imagine you've seen the style done before. How does dancing the role of James, there's Thomas as James, but we have a photo of Jack as James as well. In what way does dancing the role of James feel different from dancing a classical role like Siegfried, which we just did?
It's actually been really challenging. I feel very shy talking about Bournonville with these legends here, but it's, with a role like Siegfried, it's more of like a Russian style, so we're really presenting ourselves. We're trying to fill the stage. We're trying to make our movement very elongated and big. And with Bournonville, as Dinna said, the legs are doing, they're dynamic, they're strong, they're powerful, but the upper body is elegant, it's poised, it's calm. I like the word she said, it's a harmonious isolation. It's still organic despite the fact that they're doing very, very different things. But it's been like learning a new language, as Thomas was saying with the head thing. My head does not want to go over there. I don't want to do these things. My body.
So this is very interesting to me, because this is inside baseball, and I try to penetrate this, but I've never danced. So if the head in La Sylphide is like that, so how would, I don't know, is there an analogous way that Siegfried would hold his head, or how would it be different?
I just don't think the arms wouldn't be so low, right? You're going to engage the arms more, and we've had some. Dinna's been very good at coaching me with that, because I've had rehearsals where I start to get tired and I start to throw the arms with me, and I'm having to keep them low. I don't think they would be looking down if I was doing a role like Siegfried. I don't think I would be looking down at the arms. It would be more up. It would be, the chest would be open, and I would be more like kind of a first position out kind of.
Would you say that in a Swan Lake that the arm and leg move more together?
I would say so.
More in a similar way?
Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely.
That's helpful.
Yeah, it's, how do I say this? You're going to have a lot of moments where, with like Siegfried, you're going to, as you go up the arm, I mean, the same thing happens in La Sylphide, but there's so many more positions that you're going to go through, and that you're going to, I don't know, there's like an addition of I don't know. This is so hard
You're
to
doing
put to
great.
words sometimes. Can I just show you? You know,
I'm picking your brain because we don't have time to.
Yeah.
I know, which you will do tomorrow. But I never get to have these conversations with the dancers, so this is very nice for me to actually really go into it. I have a follow-up question for you, Jack. As you can see, James and all of the men in La Sylphide wear kilts,
Yes.
and I wondered if that is a challenge in any way or changes how you move in any way.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, you know, because it's like learning a new language, this ballet, but your body's kind of working against itself from what it wants to do, and then you throw this loose piece of clothing into the mix of it, and all of a sudden that's working against your body. So it's definitely challenging, and Dinna suggested very early on in the process that we get the kilt involved because it creates a sense of, you know, drag in the aerodynamic of your movement. So you don't want to have any curveballs, you know, when you get into the theater. You're already dealing with so much transition by the time you get into the theater. So, yeah.
So Sydney, would you say that as a female dancer that you're much more used to navigating the drag of a skirt?
Yes, I think that's why you oftentimes see a lot of the women wearing practice tutus, practice romantic skirts, even chiffon skirts that we wear in like Tchaikovsky pas de deux and, you know, ballets like that. If there's any kind of material involved, we usually try to practice with it. So it is nice to kind of give it to the men to see what it's like too, for once, because they don't have anything on. They just show up in the tights and that's it. So it's, yeah.
But it does create, I must say, a beautiful effect when the kilt moves with the dancer, especially when there are all those small jumps. It's a very impressive thing for us to see. Dinna referred a little bit to the origins of La Sylphide. I'm just going to quickly fill people in because I think it's such an interesting story, and it has to do also with the music for La Sylphide. So the original La Sylphide was choreographed in 1832. By Taglioni, right? And it was set to a score by a gentleman who I'd never heard of, Mr. Schneitzofer, right? And as I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong, Bournonville traveled to Paris. He saw this production. He wanted to bring it back to Copenhagen. And either it was too expensive to bring the production, all right? Or there was some other artistic issue. One of the things that I've read is that he did not like the music, that the score was more of a pastiche than an original piece of music. Is that what you've read?
It's probably true.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the theater in Copenhagen, not Bournonville himself, was asking to get the music score. And it could very well be that Bournonville, he made it difficult for the theater to get it because he didn't really, and said it's too expensive and we cannot pay it, because he wanted, I can think it's true, because he was used to work closely with composers, and he was telling them exactly what kind of music he wanted, and so he wanted probably to have his own score. And then he knew this young composer, Løvenskiold, who is actually Norwegian. But
we
at
have a
that
picture
time,
of Løvenskiold too
Denmark
somewhere.
and Norway were in the same union, so he was considered a Danish composer. And he composed this beautiful score for La Sylphide that is much better than Schneitzofer's.
This is what we figure. Probably this was a very great improvement. And in fact, history does not remember the version from 1832, but of course we do remember this version from 1836. I thought that Bournonville said something very interesting about the connection between the movement and the music. And this is, so from the point of view of the musicians, the sort of delicious challenge of this piece is that the music and the choreography are extremely connected. It's very specific, I would say even more than Swan Lake. Partly because there is so much pantomime and there's so much storytelling that requires not just clarity of gesture but clarity of music as well. And so I was very interested to read that Bournonville, because I think that he and Løvenskiold sort of set a new standard for this marriage of music and movement. And I think that possibly this standard was then continued with Adam, who wrote Giselle, which is another very, very specific score, and then possibly would have inspired Tchaikovsky, who was a big fan of Adam. This is this idea that I've been working on. Anyway, but what what Bournonville said was that music is composed to accompany the poem, and ballet is then created in line with the rhythm and melodies, thereby merging both art forms into one common outcome, which I thought was really nice because it's, again, it's the challenge of this piece, but it's also the joy of this piece, is putting,
because
yes.
Bournonville also said to his student that it's not, you should not kind of follow the music. Your movements, it should look like you are creating the music. So it should be that close, the connection between the movement and the music.
Which is a wonderful thing for me to hear, of course. I like that. I would like to move on to Études. There is a real connection between these two pieces, and I'm very much looking forward to hearing what our specialists have to say about that. So Études closes the program. It is a Philadelphia premiere, so it's a really big deal for us and for the city. It was choreographed, of course, by Lise's husband, Harald Lander. So we have, these are the composers for Études, and we'll get to that in a minute, but if we could go back to the photographs of Mr. Lander, there we go. And I think Lise is in that top photograph. Is that right? I believe so, yeah. So we have thank you for these fantastic photos. So Harald Lander was also a product of the Royal Danish Ballet. He later studied with Michel Fokine, whom we know from Les Sylphides, Dying Swan, The Firebird, Petrushka, an incredibly important part of dance history. Mr. Lander directed the Royal Danish Ballet from 1932 to 1951. During his tenure, he revived many Bournonville ballets, including Napoli, La Sylphide, and Flower Festival in Genzano. He also restaged pieces by Fokine and choreographed several ballets of his own, including Études, which is his most performed work, as I understand. In 1953, Lander became ballet master at the Paris Opera. So there is this Danish-French connection that I certainly would like us to talk about with all of you. Lise, can you tell us something about the ideas behind the ballet and the process that Mr. Lander went through to create this ballet?
At that time, the opera was very moved towards Russian dance and all that. And the French style has after Diaghilev's visit in Paris in 1910, I think, that was really the fashion, and you have Nijinsky and everybody was talking about Russian ballet, actually. And probably that is the reason, one of the reasons why the French style had gone to the background somehow. And there was an administrator at the opera in Paris in those years who wanted to have it back. And they knew that, and they had been on tour in Copenhagen, they had seen Bournonville Ballet, and they understood that it was there that you still had the French style, the old French style. And so that's why they wanted Harald to come and to stay, to learn, to give back the French style.
So if I can rephrase it just for a moment, what you're saying is, if I understand, that the French style was more well preserved in Denmark than it was, or in Copenhagen than it was in Paris, right? And that your husband was asked to basically reteach the French style at Paris Opera.
In Denmark.
Amazing. That's an astonishing sort of turn of events. You have been responsible for this ballet for many, many years, and you are the owner of the rights. And I think some people watching might not have even occurred to them to think that someone would own a ballet. Can you tell us something about what this means?
Later on, I had not the childhood you had, all of you, but I went with my parents to the opera in Paris and saw ballet, very often, but I had no idea that I would have a life with ballet at some time. But then I met Harald, and I became his assistant, and he learned, I was too old to start dancing, but so he learned me to see, to criticize, to have an opinion, and to understand what it was about. It was very, very fascinating. And the man was very fascinating too. So that's how it ended. And when he died in 1971, he wanted me to take care of his ballet without any assistance of somebody else somehow. And I was a little lost at that time what would happen with his ballet. And then I had the idea I knew his former wife, Thomas Lander, who was a very famous dancer. And I called her and I said, what do you think? Should we two try in collaboration and make the ballet survive and make Harald survive somehow? And so we decided to go to Budapest, where I had an offer. And we thought, there is an iron curtain, nobody will come, that's perfect. We will see whether we can do it or not. And we agreed that if we felt that we could not do it and what we did was not good enough, we would stop there. And everybody came because it was so interesting that the two Lander sisters, as they called us, could work together. And we worked until Tony died. We worked together and brought Études around.
Very unusual story. That's a wonderful story. Lise and Thomas, Études is, if I'm understanding it correctly, is it really a study, like the title, a study of ballet technique, right? If I'm not overstating. Can you tell us about how the ballet is constructed? How does it progress?
I can try,
yeah,
and then you can help me.
Yes.
I mean, of course, this is, again, Harald's, in a way, love story to tell about classical ballet and what it can do.
And I think also it's Harald's love to ballet.
To ballet.
And this is the first love story, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
And he had a very deep, deep, deep love and respect. And he has written some things about Études. You can better say it without my awful accent.
And also, in a way, when he spoke with Risager, the composer, the music comes from Carl Czerny. And now, talking about being a pianist, you have to practice all of that music to become a virtuoso. So the music also reflects what you're telling about building the ballet. Because you see the idea, the first thing we see when the curtain goes up, we see one of the white tutu ladies, and she is basically showing the ground positions of ballet. We see the first position, the second, the third, the fourth, and the fifth position. And those positions were founded by the Sun King, Ludwig XIV, all the way back in the French court. But this is sort of the beginning of classical ballet. And this is what Harald chose to show there. And then the performance goes into showing how to become a ballerina in that way, because you go through the journey of showing the work at the bar, how that progresses into stretching, which becomes very beautiful silhouettes.
Let me just say that, I'm sorry, that they actually have ballet bars as part of the scenery.
Yeah.
So that it's as if we're sort of lifting the curtain and looking.
And looking in a way, showing how you would build how we train almost every day. Going through this position, we go to the bar, and then we stretch, and then we get in the center. But then in the middle of the performance, there is an homage, a romantic ballet. And this is Harald's, again, dream and love towards the romantic ballet. And that's kind of in the middle of this performance. And then we continue, and then if it was in the studio, after the bar, after the stretching, then you will get in the center, then you start doing small jumps, then you do bigger jumps, and then by the end you get into the virtuosity, and you have the ballerina that is doing, you know, almost impossible things on on point, and then the performance goes a little down again, and then it goes into even bigger
Yes, that's
jumps.
the way it should be
Yeah,
split.
exactly. Yeah,
With
crescendo.
Crescendo, and then you
Little
go
down.
and then second crescendo,
Yeah.
and you go
Yeah.
and then the end, and at the end
It should have
it's-
the feeling of an explosion, like almost like a firework towards the end.
So you follow that
Yeah.
that feeling.
Yeah. So you can look at it in two ways. If you don't know anything about ballet, you will probably go there, and hopefully you will see fantastic choreography, classical ballet, and you will think you will get a lot. But just from looking at what all the incredible dancing that's going on. But at the same time, if you want to go a little more into it, it's an abstract ballet, but there is a storyline.
Yeah, exactly.
So it has actually both sides.
Can you alluded to this a little bit, can you talk about how and how Études draws on the Bournonville technique, in what way it does or doesn't?
Yeah, I think it comes from the same school. Harald Lander was also a product of the school when he first entered the ballet school. So actually, when we talk about the Bournonville classes, there are classes. So back at that time, and also after Bournonville stopped as a director, you tried to gather the classes in the beginning of the 19th century, where on Monday you would do all the same classes, all the same steps, Tuesday, Wednesday, and so on, all the way up until Saturday. And each class would maybe be about 24 steps for each class. And so you would sort of have a regular system of training. Harald Lander actually changed that because he wanted to develop the Royal Danish Ballet even further, which you can then see with Études when you look at that ballet. So he wanted to make sure that they could do more than just a Bournonville repertoire. But just to go back, I think Harald was through many of the same steps that also many years later I danced and Dinna danced. So there is a thread within the tradition, but Harald Lander developed that even further.
Yes, he did, and he had, I think probably he had, as a child, he was educated in Copenhagen and Bournonville and all that. At one time in his life, it was about 18, 19, 20, he was a dancer, and he wanted to see something else, and he wanted to see character dance. And he went to study with Fouquet in New York, but he studied at the same time with the brother Cancinos, which were Rita Hayworth's brothers. He studied Spanish dance, and then he studied Russian dance, and he was engaged in a company where Paramount Circle had that, and he made a one-night stand for 2 years, I think, and with other artists, and they danced 5 shows each day, and they traveled by night. It was awful conditions today. If you
Imagine
had
that.
to live like that.
You think you're tired now? My God.
And so all of that temperament is also in Études.
So the Russian
Yeah.
dance is absolutely also part of how Cossack dance.
You see in the Études there is a part where we call it the mazurka, and that has a lot of power. Yeah.
And you have also those arms.
Yes, yes.
Which are direct.
Which exactly.
Russian.
Yeah. And the contrary, it's also then when you have the homage for the romantic ballet, it's the contrary. And that's what's nice about this piece, because it has both energies.
So people will have just watched La Sylphide, and they will have that movement style in their head. Then we will go on to Études, but then there's going to be a big reference, especially in your costuming, to La Sylphide again in the middle of Études, which is such a lovely, I think, a lovely connection between these two works. Sydney, oh, you have one more thing to say.
Well, it's more, I just wanted to say that Harald Lander, he's the writer of this ballet, and he's the man who is the genius of this. But when I'm staging it, I think it's important that I try to feel that we are from the same school and we've gone through some of the same things, and then that combined with the support from Lise, who is the historical thread and who works so closely with Harald, that is for me the best way I can try and put this ballet together today. So it's a combination of that, I feel.
And maybe also because when Études was created, it was in Denmark, and the creation was more Danish than the French version. The French version is very different. It is the same ballet. But it's constructed differently. They wanted a real
more explosion.
feu d'artifice.
Fireworks. Yeah.
Ballet for the company.
Yeah.
And so he went that way to which had become his new life.
Yeah.
Also.
Yeah.
And there is a big difference in the soul and esprit of the ballet in 48 and 52.
So the version we see now, is this more the Danish version? Or
That is actually what he then finally made when he then came to Paris in 1952.
when he was ballet
So
master.
there is, the beginning of the ballet starts with Harald in Copenhagen with, he is an artistic director, and he does this piece in 1948, I think it's in January, and then it premieres there. But then a few years later, he comes to Paris, and there they wanted even more, so he builds on something extra at this point, and also changes certain things within the romantic, I think.
It was not a compromise from his side, because it suited him perfectly well.
Yeah.
He was very happy to
do
that.
it.
And
Yeah.
he enjoyed a lot doing that.
So
So he followed it, but still in those
in the frames, yeah.
the same aspect.
But that's a pattern how it then became kind of the structure of what we know today. That's what happened when he then went to Paris.
Okay. Sydney, we're going to segue to you because you're the person who actually dances it. So Sydney, like Jack, recently finished a very successful run of Swan Lake. And again, I'd like to find out, like, what is the difference in preparation? How is this a different experience for you than preparing for a role like Odile?
I think for Swan Lake, there's so many different versions. It's done all around the world, and there's so many different interpretations of it. And there's something to be said, like similarly, I can compare it to dancing a Balanchine ballet, where you have people who have actually danced it in the past, and they're masters at doing that style and doing those ballets many, many, many times, come and kind of pass along that legacy. And so this is very different in the sense that we have these amazing people coming to stage these iconic ballets that we've all kind of grown up on. Me personally with Études, when I was a student, my teacher probably wasn't the right version, but he would teach in variations class and pas de deux class. He would teach the ballerina's variation, and he always used the music for when we were in pas de deux class. He would play that music, and sometimes in ballet class, if it was Friday and we were all tired, he would play the Études music for ballet class. So for me personally with this ballet, I've always dreamt of doing it. So to finally get the opportunity and work with these people is just phenomenal. And so I think there is something so special about dancing Swan Lake, because I think we're all very familiar with it. But I think also sharing with, especially Philadelphia's audience, who they've never seen Études, and Sylphide, it's been a very long time. So it's such a treat for all of us, like they said, to pass along to all of the dancers this legacy. and for all of us to share that with the audience. So that's really amazing.
Well said. It has felt like a very authentic experience working with everyone here. It's been really wonderful. I just want to say a couple of words about the music for Études before we start fielding questions from our watchers on Zoom. So Études is, of course, the title of the ballet, but the music is by Carl Czerny, as you mentioned, and Czerny was Beethoven's best-known pupil. What we know him for are his piano études. He wrote more than 1,000 pieces of music, almost all of which were for the piano. And Czerny études are a rite of passage for every pianist. I'm sure Dinna had to practice them. Her mother was a concert pianist. Perhaps Thomas practiced them too when he was growing up. Yeah, every pianist has worked on études. And what Harald Lander did, which I think was very clever, was to hire someone to orchestrate this music, which was written for piano. I've been practicing. The composer's name was Knudo Rizea. And it's interesting to me that this gentleman, who was the one smoking the pipe, it's in one of the photos, he was actually a 12-tone composer. He wrote very modernist music. And he throws in a couple of little funny harmonic moments that are not exactly Czerny, but he realized this piano music of quite a large orchestra, and may I say the last 5, 6, 7 minutes, quite a noisy orchestra. It's very impressive because, as you say, the fireworks are on stage and also in the pit. It's a very impressive orchestration of this piano music. So I think it's time for the questions from our watchers. I'm going to read them for everyone and then ask whomever would like to jump in. What does it mean for a company to be ready to do Études? What are the qualities that are necessary for it to be successful?
I just want to say that today we had our full in-studio rehearsal run through with the whole company since January when Thomas was here last time. But I think I was just reminded of how the entire company has such a duty and job. There's something so revealing about doing classwork on stage, but also doing the most challenging aspects of classwork, whether it's from the bar and being very dynamic and doing very difficult things, being on the music, and also doing fouettes in unison and jumps and everything. So I think it's every single member of the company has to be at their top game.
And I must say, I can warmly recommend to come and see Philadelphia Ballet do this, because it is already, we feel very convinced that they're going to do a beautiful job. And it goes hand in hand also, because when you get in class in the morning, you know Études is ahead, because I remember being a dancer too. And even the way you start your training, you have another focus, because you know actually what you're doing from the first step when you touch the bar in the morning. It's something that's going to be used in that performance. So I think it goes hand in hand in that way somehow also, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
For Sydney, how is dancing in a classroom ballet? By the way, she is the ballerina, and this is the tutu she wears on stage. So she doesn't wear class clothes, rehearsal clothes. How is dancing in a classroom ballet different from a ballet like La Sylphide emotionally, artistically? So Sydney is not dancing La Sylphide this time around. Have you danced La Sylphide? No. Okay. So yes.
Well, there is, maybe we can also go to Dinna in a second, he can talk more about that. But
or
in
we can also talk to Jack about it.
In Études, there is the romantic section, and that has actually many of the qualities that we work on, and which Dinna is doing next door when we're in the studios. She's doing, also this homage, a classical, not classical, romantic ballet. And that's what's also in Études, in the middle of the performance.
Mm-hmm. How has the training, I wonder if it's the Bournonville training, do you think? How has the Bournonville training changed over the years? Maybe Dinna can talk about that a little bit?
Well, the Bournonville classes have not changed in that way because they are this set of classes with long combinations that at the Royal Danish Ballet School, kids used to learn them from small age. And when you became aspirant, you needed to get through all those 6 classes in order to get into the company. What has changed is that from being only a Bournonville company, which the Royal Danish Ballet were up until the beginning of 1900, when they only did Bournonville ballets and only Bournonville training. Then, of course, now it has changed, so also Royal Danish Ballet does the wide range of repertoire, also contemporary or new creations, everything. And the Bournonville training is not anymore part of the daily training, which is a pity in a way, because I always used to say, can you do a Bournonville class, then you're ready for anything, because it gives you strength, it gives you the feeling of center, it gives you stamina, it gives you the rapidity, the quickness, and it gives you the musicality, the sense of the port de bras. In a way, it gives you all the elements that you need for classical ballet. So, but of course, it's not fun to do Monday class all the time in your whole ballet life every Monday. So it's not that way anymore once you do the Bournonville class. And it's not done like that, but in that way, the way it's changing, one can say, is, and I hope it will into the future also, that the Bournonville style will be integrated in the class, especially in Denmark, where we are still doing the Bournonville repertoire. But of course, combined with what the dancers need today, because you need maybe a little bit different training, more. You also need to do the big lines. The boys need to do something also with a different kind of plie and everything. So you need to find a clever way of combining. And I think that's a little bit what you're doing,
Yes.
Thomas, now when you teach Bournonville
I wanted to
classes.
mention actually that Thomas has taught at least one Bournonville class here.
I was asked, and I said yes, why not? And so I was teaching the men this Monday, and on Friday I'm going to do the ladies. And I'm of course now here. I thought I will give you some of those steps in the center. I'm going to warm you up with my own bar work, more or less. Maybe one exercise in the middle of that, but then when we get in the center, I'm picking from the different days, and we're using also the music that works for the steps. And now that we are working with La Sylphide and also Études, I think it's nice to be able to just try that for fun for one day, and it will give you the flavor, and you will suddenly see the relationship there is and the line that goes through both of the works by just trying some of those steps. So I thought actually it made quite a lot of sense for me to maybe just get the chance to teach the company twice while I was here.
So Jack, what was that like?
Oh my gosh, I was hoping you weren't going to ask this. It was brutal. It was hard. It was different. It was a Monday morning, and I was not at my best. But it was everything that these two are describing. It was the stamina, the challenge. It was a treat to get to do that. It was a treat to get to take such a class.
But this is also why you can't do it every day. It's good to either integrate it a little bit, do certain steps, or on Monday I try to give you maybe a little more of the taste. But if you actually do these steps and then going into do James, then you probably feel the momentum of the jumps, how you do all of that. It actually is built up for some of that.
Absolutely.
Because in the Bournonville, it has quite a lot of heavy jumping actually, both for the ladies and for the men.
Okay, there's a question for me as a conductor. How do I interpret and convey the differences between narrative and music to support the dancer's storytelling? So I think they mean the differences between the narrative sections and the sort of pure dance sections. So that's a great question. I've always been very drawn in every story ballet to the narrative bits, the stuff in between, the interstitial music, because I enjoy that the orchestra has a role in telling the story. And so, the big tunes are wonderful, of course, that's always fun to do, but I especially am drawn to those moments when there's a lot of storytelling going on, and pantomime is not enough. Pantomime is wonderful, but it's not enough. I mean, if it were enough, then we wouldn't have music in those moments, right? So it feels particularly collaborative for me in those moments to be helping with the storytelling. So I love it. Okay, explain what, oh yes, I know, there are a lot of bun heads up here on the stage, and explain what épaulement is and how it is incorporated into the choreography, I think for both ballets. You couldn't have this answer this question. You mentioned looking at the feet, for example, but what about other focus that the dancers show? So what is épaulement for starters?
Well, épaulement, it's épaule, yeah, that's the shoulders. So it's a direction in the room that you are using, so your shoulders is defining if you're going on a diagonal, if you're going on a straight line, if you're going totally profile. And in relation to that is then that you can put your head in different, you can go with the movement or you can go opposite the movement, and depending on which legs you have in front.
Yeah.
If it's a crossed leg, yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's the épaulement. Very good.
And we have also beautiful épaulement there in the image. It's how they use their shoulders. Oh, last question. This is tragic. For the dancers, what part of the performance brings you the most joy as you dance? And before they answer, I was very struck at the beginning of this conversation by how often you use the word joy and you use the word love. Because this is a program that technically is very difficult, no? Yeah, there's a lot of technique and there's a lot of challenge, but it is striking to me that even with all of that, really the focus seems to be in the Bournonville technique and in Mr. Lander's work on joy and love. So anyway, for the dancers, what part of the performance brings you the most joy while you dance?
Oh.
Jackie's going to think about it for a while.
Yeah, that's actually a really difficult question to answer, because, like, for me, I've never been able to dance. I mean, I've been introduced to the romantic style and everything, but to be able to just kind of fully immerse myself in being the only one on stage and being with my partner and dancing this romantic style with the beautiful music and choreography, that's been a really, really fun challenge for me. It's very new, but I think for me specifically, throughout the entire performance of Études, specifically the one I'm dancing, the music is just, you can just sit there and just close your eyes and meditate and just be so inspired by the music and how, and like we talked about, how it progresses and how it kind of, you know, even the very first thing you hear is still so beautiful, and then it just progresses and gets more exciting and more beautiful, and it kind of just, it has a perfect, like I use the word progression already, but it has a perfect progression along with the choreography. It's just a perfect combination. Yeah, so.
Jack?
Yeah, I think that Dinna had said, you know, Bournonville had talked so much about the joy, and she said, you know, the pantomime is where we tell the story, and it is a tragedy, so it's in the dancing itself that we can present that joy, and maybe it sounds cliche, but it's in that moment where we get to dance, I think that I experience the most joy. I get to kind of be free and let loose. I like to smile. We had moments where Dinna said, "You're pantomiming here, you're not supposed to smile." And I think that's just the moment where we really get to kind of do what we love, and yeah, that's the most enjoyable, when we get to dance.
Well, I'm afraid that's all we have time for. I'm very sad to say. I want to thank all of you for your expertise and your joy and your love for dance and for conveying that so wonderfully. It's hard to talk to an audience that we can't see, but I have the feeling that they are feeling it on the other side of their computer screens. So thank you so much. And an enormous thank you also to Judy and Alan Friedman for bringing us all together for this. This has been really wonderful. Thank you.